Yeah, well, at least Memphis basketball fans had something to cheer about this weekend. The Memphis Grizzlies have now won 3 straight and are 9-1 in their last 10 games after picking up wins in back-to-back games against Boston and Washington this weekend. Memphis averaged 30 assists, shooting 51% combined in this weekend's games, and are currently one of the most informed teams in the league. Dallas is the only other team in the West that have won more than 7 out of their last 10 games.
Yeah, a big couple of games and performances there from the Grizzlies, obviously starting with that Boston game. I mean, is that their biggest win this season?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Boston looked like the best team in the NBA. The Grizzlies
reigning champs.
Yeah, reigning champs. They really disrupted that entire offense. They forced a lot of turnovers. That's really where they showed, even though the game was closer at the end, Boston got over 120 points on them. Their defense was really sound throughout that entire game.
Yeah, my favorite thing to kind of see out of that Boston game was we saw Memphis, go toe-to-toe with Dallas and have the lead in the fourth quarter and then just blow out turnovers, fouls, couldn't kind of get a win over a top-tier team. You see them have the lead in the fourth quarter against Boston, and then they lose it with I think it was about 10 minutes left in the game, and then they're able to get back into it. Yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr., he had 14 of his 27 points there in the fourth quarter to completely close it out. And that to me shows so much maturity in Jaren and just so much composure in the team as a whole to go from losing to a team like Dallas and probably being pretty frustrated with themselves that they know they should have won that game, to then go to Boston and you can kind of almost be like, oh, is it all going to happen again? Did what we do in Dallas, is that going to be the same here in Boston? And no, instead they close it out. Their first win in Boston since 2013. They snap a 6-game losing streak to Boston. And I think it's like their first win or the second win in 17 games against them.
Yeah,
so
it's crazy.
Crazy stats, and I think that goes to show a lot of where this team is going and that they're on the rise right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think that you talked about Jaren showing maturity. I think this team defensively and offensively is showing maturity. To come in and hold Jason Tatum to 6 of 21 from the field, I believe that's what it was. Yeah, in Boston to 30% from 3 as a whole. And I thought it was pretty, if I'm a Grizzly coach or player, I'm pretty disrespected that Boston came in and tried to shoot 63s against them, because
it's wild numbers.
The Grizzlies are top in the league in 3-point percentage against, something that they were bottom in the league last year. They've done a lot better job of closing out. Boston really thought that they could come in and just shoot the lights out. Boston are averaging around 43s a game, so they're shooting 20 more than that against Memphis. And then they had 64 points in the paint, the Grizzlies did as a whole. Memphis shot 50% from the field and 45% from 3. So the flip side of that is they were pretty efficient offensively. And then, of course, Ja racking up 32.
Season high for him.
Yeah, and Jaren getting a lot of his points in the fourth quarter, finishing with 27. And it's not easy to play against that Boston defense the way Jaren plays, going up against a guy like Porzingis, too. I think overall, the entire unit was working well. You saw Brandon Clark get back into the flow.
Probably his best game we've seen from him this season.
Definitely, and defensively as well. But, yeah, I think what we've seen in losses this year, you go back to a couple games ago against Golden State, it just couldn't come together offensively and defensively. It was kind of half and half. They would play the first quarter really good. They were putting up points. And then the second quarter, they fell through defensively. And it's kind of half on, half off. And up until, I'd say, 2 minutes into the fourth quarter, where they kind of struggled a little bit, they called a timeout, got it together, and then came down the stretch and said, we're putting Dallas in the past. This is the new Grizzlies. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that this Grizzlies team, I think what a lot of people think is that this is a flash in the pan. Now that we have a 10-game sample size, they're 9-1. The only other team that's 9-1 their last 10 is Dallas, who are playing exceptional basketball.
Shouldn't be 9-1. They should probably be 8-2 after the Grizzlies blew it.
Yeah, well, Luka and Dallas earned that game. But, yeah, I just wanted to go through some of what the Grizzlies are doing best at. First, in points per game with 122. Second in assists per game, which is something that they really wanted to hammer down this year, something that they struggled with last year and even 2 years ago a little bit. They were good 2 years ago, but they weren't 30 assists per game. They're 8th in steals. They're 4th in points differential. They're +8 for the entire season. So they outscored teams by almost 9 points this season, which I think is really impressive. They don't have a ton of blowout wins outside of that Washington game and a couple other games earlier this year. The only thing that I think that they need to work on defensively is allowing less points per game, because They're 13th and 18th in the league in points per game against, allowing 113 points per game. And so you saw that in how many points they let up in against Indiana, when that game shouldn't have been that close, even though it really wasn't that close. Against Boston, where Boston are putting up over 120, and then what Dallas did to them, and even in that Golden State loss too. Just allowing too many fast break points in those games, and against Boston, they only allowed 4 fast break points. Now, Boston are not a full court team. They like to really slow it down, play half court. Recently, they've been trying to pick up the pace a little bit. If you look at teams and their pace in the game, Boston is climbing that ladder, but allowing 4 fast break points is really impressive. And then the bench, Rachel, first in points per game off the bench and assists per game for bench players, racking up 48 points per game and a lot of assists.
Which is just crazy numbers, and it's so interesting when you think about it, because you're saying, okay, you're number 1 in bench points, and they still don't have all their players back.
Yeah.
Like even last night, they don't have Ja, they don't have Dez, and then you look, Gigi's still out, Vince is still out, Luke was out with an illness. You don't have a ton of guys whose names you expect to kind of be in a roster probably, and they're still not out there, and they're producing that many points and that many points off the bench. It does make me wonder, though, as we kind of head into the stretch of this season, what is that 10, 11-man rotation going to look like for the Grizzlies? Who do you want to see in that rotation? Because they're all playing pretty dang well right now.
Yeah, well, they're not going to rotate 11 players. I mean, they'll be lucky if they rotate 10, honestly. That's rare in the NBA. You asked me about this beforehand. Gigi's supposed to come back. He wants to come back before Christmas.
January, right?
Before Christmas, because his birthday is, I believe, is in that December 20th
I think
range.
that medical release they put out the other day said that it's going to be about January.
It's going to be about January.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. So, sorry, Gigi, not before your birthday. So, for this, I'm going to leave Gigi out of it. But the prime starting 5 for Grizzlies, I think is pretty obvious. Ja, Bane, Brandon Clark, Triple J, and Edey. We'll see when Edey comes back, but this is with Edey in the lineup, and then you have SBJ backing up Ja. I put Jalen Wells over Marcus Smart.
Whoa.
But Marcus can also play point guard as well, and he can kind of play small forward because he guards a lot of small forwards. He's a very physical guy. But I think Jalen Wells has been incredible this season. Why would you not give him more? Why would you not give him 18 minutes a game? And then you could still give Marcus 20.
I was going to say, he's been incredible, but I think you lean on Marcus for that experience, which obviously Jalen doesn't have, to no fault of his own, right? He's a rookie, but I think what Smart brings, that's why they got him, is for that experience in tight games and closing games out.
Right. Santi Aldama backing up at the 4, and then I put, Huff's going to be the second option at center. I think that he's going to still be able to play. Now, you can rotate in Jaren Jackson in at the center when Edey is struggling defensively or offensively or just needs a break, because I'm worried about him being healthy for the rest of the season. And then you have to fill in guys like Vince Williams Jr., Jake LaRavia, and Luke Kennard. I think that they need to make a trade. And I don't think that they should trade. I mean, no one wants them to trade Vince Williams Jr. No one wants them to trade Gigi Jackson. And so I think that you have to do sort of a deal with Luke Kennard, Conchar, or LaRavia, because they're going to be upset. LaRavia's had a good season so far, but he's going to be upset because he's not going to be playing that many minutes. A lot of Grizzly fans disagree. He's a fan favorite. He's a polarizing figure. I think LaRavia is a great player. I think he can definitely go on and have a career. But if I look at who's ahead of him, possibly with Vince Williams Jr. and Gigi Jackson, even if Luke Kennard's not really there because he could play the 1 or the 2 or even the 3, LaRavia is more of a 3 or a 4. I think you got to get rid of him, honestly. I hate to say it because I love watching him play, but there's no way that they're going to be able to play that big of a rotation, and I don't think that you can just bench Jalen Wells. And I didn't even put Cam Spencer in there, Rachel.
Yeah, wow.
You still need, I think Cam Spencer can fit somewhere in the point guard and shooting guard position isn't as top heavy as or it is top heavy. It's just not as deep as the rest of the team. So yeah, I think Cam Spencer might get the short straw just based off of him being injured at the beginning of the season, not being able to play that much. Now he's come through, especially putting up 50 points in the G League, but he may spend a little bit more time in the G League than Jalen Wells does this season. Who knows?
Certainly a lot of things that the Grizzlies have to work out, and they're good problems to have, right? If you're Taylor Jenkins, these are like the best problems you could ever imagine, especially after last season, all the problems they had. One guy who's probably I feel like very confident saying this, who they're not going to trade, is Ja Morant. We've got the bobblehead out on the table, and there's a reason why. It's because the jar dropper is back.
Yep. Out in Boston, we talked a lot about the game. The double clutch reverse slam. Eat that, Porzingis. Ja Morant with one of the best dunks, probably the best dunk of the season. Oh, Porzingis had no shot. Look at him. He thinks he's going to go up and, he goes up and under. Amazing from Ja Morant. I thought he wasn't going to dunk anymore. What's up with that?
I know. And because we saw it like literally a couple plays before that, he was on a fast break and just chose to do a layup, and it should have been a dunk. Like, that's what you were expecting. Like, anyone else in that situation would dunk it, and he just did the layup, and you're like, oh, wow, maybe he really is done with dunking for the season unless he absolutely has to. And he goes and dunks that, and I saw him post-game. He was asked about it. I thought you weren't dunking anymore. And he was like, well, I thought if I was to try and lay it up, he would have blocked it, so had to dunk.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how Ja's brain works. Yeah, Ja's like, Porzingis is going to put a hand up on the left side of the rim, so why don't I just double clutch it and reverse slam?
For someone who's done with dunking, it was a dang good dunk. And if that's the last one we ever see from him this season, it was pretty good. But I don't think it will be, because he just has the ability to go and do it at any given time. I think, obviously, if he has the option to lay it up and it's an easy one, he'll just lay it up and not put any risk on it. But, I mean, if there's the option to dunk, he will dunk if he needs to. And I think that kind of shows maturity in him as well. We talked about maturity in Jaren Jackson Jr., but maturity in him too, to be like, you know what, obviously I love to have those flashy moments and show everyone just how good I am, which obviously he is insanely good. The air time, we talk about it all the time, and the ability for him to just like throw the ball out to different places that you don't expect. You see a bunch of their players talk about, like, I didn't expect him to throw it to me in that moment, but he did, and somehow he found the pass. He can do so many crazy things, and I think obviously we're going to see more dunking from him, but I think it shows maturity in him that he's like, you know what, it's more important for me to stay healthy than it is for me to go up there and give a flashy dunk that's going to be on ESPN, #1.